Operation Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpidine. We have Spigs18 or Anthony. And Dean, what are we doing here today?
Well, today we have a special guest. We have Ray, or Dissonant Signal, on our Discord. Is not only putting out awesome work for Radiant Draconis Designs, they're one of our moderators. And they're also a moderator for Mighty Cook Games asset team. And Radiant Draconis YouTube channel and their websites create wonderful worlds for both Cypher System and D&D. Ray is a champion for inclusivity in gaming and a defender of safe spaces for the LGBTQIA gamers in our hobby. So let's welcome Ray to Cypher Unlimited Twitch.
Thank you for having me on today.
All right, welcome. Anthony, you want to take the bit?
Yep. First off, I mean, I would say welcome to the CU, but you're part of the family, so welcome again to the CU. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Radiant Draconis Design, which I love that name, by the way. And how did you get into role-playing games?
Sadly in role-playing games, God. Well, I was raised on them. My parents, they played them. Some of my earliest childhood memories are sitting on my mum or my dad's lap while they played GURPS. And sometimes they'd let me roll the dice and stuff and participate, which was really fun. So I was indoctrinated to the hobby at a very young age, and it sort of just flowed on from there.
You love to see it, honestly.
Household of nerds. The whole lot of us.
I love it.
Do you still game with your parents?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, we all have busy lives and, our own working lives and stuff, so we do when we can, when we get the time, yeah.
That is awesome. A family that games together stays together.
That's the one.
I have a feeling I know the answer to this question already, but what games were y'all playing, or what games did they? I'm assuming early edition D&D, but it could be something else. There were lots of games back then.
He said GURPS.
Oh, he did say GURPS. Oh, gotcha. GURPS. All right, cool.
Yeah.
GURPS.
So my parents started out. Yeah, I started out with them playing GURPS, and then D&D 3.5. Those were the two games that they played the most.
Wow, GURPS.
My most memorable moment was when my dad's character was in a real tight spot, so he turned himself into a pizza.
Nice.
He turned himself into a pizza, and then one of the other characters put that pizza in an oven and then ate it.
What's funny? I know since you were playing GURPS, there was absolutely a rule for that in some book somewhere, because GURPS had a rule for everything.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Your bookshelf looks nice too, Ray. Your bookshelf looks nice.
Oh, thank you. Got my beautiful array of books here. My pride and joy. I don't have a drinking problem. I have a book problem.
I think a lot of people can agree with that.
Can you see what's going on behind me?
Yeah.
For me, it's a dice problem.
Oh yeah.
We won't talk about. Do I need to show you that too?
I like how we all can reach within arm's reach, just pull out a huge container of dice. That's what we do.
How about?
I got my dice jail. I keep my dice jail on my desk.
How about a dice problem?
Oh, nice.
I like how you have a picture just ready to throw on your background. But either way, though, let's keep moving it on a little bit here. Could you tell us a little bit about your work in the LGBTQIA community and then using MCG products to kind of help people explore and understand their identities?
Yeah, so aside from, just running games for the fun of it, just for the sake of running games, I also run some games for queer youth groups and stuff. So most of my work around there is sort of based around helping, because often with LGBTQIA youth, it can be hard to socialize, because you're ostracized, especially in high school can be real nasty. So I go into these groups, and it's all about helping give them social skills, give them a sense of community, And beyond that, just sort of helping them explore their own identities through their characters. So I think the best example I have of that was we had a kid come, was in the group, and wasn't quite sure about where they fit in the community, and they tried playing a character, and they were building a character, and we got to the question of, well, what gender do you want your character to be? And they were like, I'd like to try no gender. I want neutral. And so for that one shot, it was they them. It was neutral pronouns. And at the end of it, they were like, that felt so good. I want that in real, and in the rest of my life. And it helped them sort of work out how they wanted others to refer to them, because they got to experiment in that safe place, with a character that's kind of separated from them. So it's got that sort of wall of safety behind it. So it's just stuff like that, just having people come in, play characters who are different to who they are, and they some people discover who they are, and some people discover who they aren't, and that's the real wonderful thing about it.
I mean, it's so awesome for you to be able to help someone using a role-playing game. That's like a truly, truly inspiring story. I must admit, when we were flattered when you approached us about doing this topic, inclusivity in gaming, and because I'm not gonna lie, at first I thought, are we the right people to have this discussion? We want to be allies, and we want to put out in the best light possible as we can, and because I think everyone has a story to tell, and everyone should have the right to tell that story. So I'm so happy that we got together and we're finally doing this conversation, because I think it's really important, not for just role play games, just life in general.
I'm stoked. Yeah.
What's really nice about this is, like I said, it's just a reflection. I've been using RPGs for the last few years to help veterans come back to function in the world. So it's a similar thing. It allows you to be able to, open a doorway or a pathway for somebody. And with that being said, you kind of touched on it already, but my question was like, do you personally bring in LGBTQIA characters into your games? And what you kind of already touched on is why it's important for everyone to feel represented in RPGs. But if you want to expand on that some more, it would be great.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of have a bit of a mission. Some might call it an objective, big scary, But no, so in my games, I try to have my characters, as best as I can, reflect a diverse array of different aspects of humanity, and sometimes not humanity when they're not human characters. So like a main NPC in my current weekly Numenera game uses they them pronouns. I have another NPC who is currently dating one of the characters, and both of them are women. So in my games we do tend to have queer characters, but it's not like a shoehorned, woohoo, look here, queer character. It's just kind of trying to have it, it's part of life. So some characters are queer, some aren't. When I'm preparing for my games, I like to have a conscious sort of thing where I look at it and I'm like, am I being balanced here? Am I portraying what I should? Involves a lot of self-reflection, because I would say by inclination, I am more likely to put more queer characters in than I probably should. Just because of, who I am and the people I play with. So I like to keep it balanced, and try to have one of my key rules, and I think it's a really important rule for all storytelling that involves characters from marginalized groups, is that the marginalization shouldn't be the center of their story. It's an aspect of who they are, but it shouldn't be all who they are. a character can be gay, trans, non-binary, whatever, but that shouldn't be like the focal point of their character. It's part of who they are, but you know, they have a life, they have jobs, they've got goals, they've got families, they've got so much more to them. So yeah, that's kind of the approach I like to take, is making sure that it's not too, you know, shoved sort of everywhere, where it's like I'm shoehorning it in.
You're making it natural. It should be naturalistic, as opposed to it just being there for the sake of being there.
Yeah,
and that's really, I mean, I think that's really appreciated, because it gives other people a chance to be more accepting and learn. You learn that way, as opposed to, you know, it being thrust upon you, almost like, you know, Blair, look at me, you know.
I never really liked, you know, especially like when companies and stuff, you know, put all that bright rainbow stuff everywhere. I find it often as a quite almost patronizing, whether that's sort of rainbow capitalism. So what I like is a very sort of natural, comfortable thing where, you know, we've got characters who are queer, we've got characters who aren't. It's no big deal. It's just, you know, part of the diverse world.
I mean, you have mentioned it earlier, you know, it's just realistic. You know, like, you don't introduce like, hey, this is my gay friend, this is my friend. You know what I mean? Or regardless of anything, this is, you know, whether it's diversity and race, you know, it's you know, everyone has their own goals and wants and desires, and, you know, they're characters. You're playing a character. You're not playing a, you know, a gender or so.
I guess especially like part of it is that I kind of like, because of course role-playing games are an escape from the real world. They're a, you know, they're a fantasy. They let us play out things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. So one of the things I really like is, because we live in a world where it's not possible to have being queer just be part of you and it not matter, because whether it's prejudice or whether it's allies who take it too far, your queer identity becomes far more a part of you than I like, just by necessity, by survival. And so in my role-playing games, I really like to play that sort of, have that almost fantasy world where it doesn't matter. It's like, you can be a gay character, you can be whatever, and it just doesn't matter. People won't treat you any different. You're just another person. Because that's the world that I wish we had, where we could just be who we are, and it wouldn't be controversial or a topic for discussion and debate. I like to, even though it does make, I have had people describe my games as a bit idealistic, you know, a bit rose tinted, but I'm playing a game to have fun. I don't want to live out what I do in the real world. I want a world where it's, you know, it's chill.
Yeah.
I don't have to.
You want to be in a world that, like you said, that is idealistic. It's idealistically, you know. I mean, that's what original Star Trek was. It was
exactly. I had a player who played in my games a couple of years ago who did describe my games as being a bit like Star Trek. You know, it's a very positive spin, and I'm like, hell yeah. I don't want to live in this dark thing. I want to have fun. I want to be in a happy world. Unless I'm running a horror game, in which case things get very dark. But other than that,
I'm gonna ask the uncomfortable and hard questions, because I think this is, you know, we're going in a good direction, and I think it should be asked. You know, as a straight male, right? Is it offensive to have gay characters in an RPG if the GM isn't, you know, isn't part of that community?
No. It is. So this is one of the big things, and I feel like it's a problem in the community, is that people are afraid to include those characters because they feel that, you know, because they aren't that what they are, they're not, they can't. So the thing I always, in role-playing games, thing I come back to, there's a couple of things. The first is that, I mean, in real life, are you a sorcerer? Are you a wizard? You're playing one. We come to these games to play people who aren't us. But there's some things within that. So a straight GM can absolutely should have queer characters. Just like as a white GM, I have characters of all different races in my games, and I try to include cultural influences from a bunch of different places, not just my own background. But the key thing, and it's something that because I've run a couple of GM workshops at conventions before, and the thing I always come back to is sensitivity. If you are out there playing, say, I don't know, say you're a straight GM and you're out there and you have a gay NPC, if they're all like, hey girl, and that's their whole personality and it's this really inflated caricature of a gay person, then that's offensive. I mean, it's a stereotype, it's hurtful. But if, you know, you've got an NPC, they're like any of your other NPCs, they're just also gay, then you've made your game more inclusive. Just like the same, like if I came in with an NPC who was, say we're playing a historical game set in the real world, and I come in with an Iranian character, and I'm like, this Iranian character is Ahmed the terrorist. That is a horrifically racist stereotype. But if I go, hey everyone, this is NPC, this is Ahmed, he is, he's an average farmer. He's just trying to support his family, or he's a soldier, or he's a city guard. It's about including in your games without having those really sort of, and I don't know if you guys know this, but it's something big in New Zealand, gollywogs. It's a really dark part of our history. And I don't know how widespread they are, but basically they were dolls. They were black skin dolls that had big, big red lips, and they were meant to be this really exaggerated racist caricature of black people. And they were a thing in New Zealand and Australia for a long time. And that's just the thing I always come back to is don't gollywog it. Don't lean into all these horrible stereotypes because it's so easy not to. I mean, you can have, I don't know, you can have Nigel, the gay character. Nigel doesn't have to be overly femme. Nigel doesn't have to, hit on every boy he sees. Nigel can live a normal life. He can just be like any other character.
It's funny you bring that up. It's funny you bring it up, Ray, because one of my best friends, he's like a brother to me, is a gay guy. And it's funny because he played a character one time in our game, and I had to take over the character because he left. And the character wasn't, like you said, he wasn't a caricature, but he was very imperious, very proper, very aloof. And that's how we played it. It was just kind of funny because there were moments where you could, you might see some of that because he would look at you, he'd look down his nose at everyone, things like that. But it wasn't, it wasn't a character. It wasn't over affectated.
Yeah. It's about recognizing where you're privileged and then not playing into those stereotypes. It's the same in comedy. You don't punch down. Punch down comedy is the worst kind of comedy. Like people who go on stage as a comedian and put on a silly accent to make fun of another culture, it's not funny. It's just it all comes back to Will Wheaton's first law of gaming. Don't be a dick. It's simply, it's pretty law. That's the law. It's Will Wheaton's law of gaming, and it works. Like, if you're sensitive about how you portray people, and if you're careful and and you accept that, you're gonna make a mistake, then you'll have a better gaming experience overall. And like,
I was gonna say not to cut you off, but we're gonna move on because I think
it's all good.
we touching on some subjects that I want to get back to because I think it's very important. you know,
It's all
some of the topics that we're talking about now, we definitely going to touch on. But you know, we had a conversation offline a couple of days ago, and you were telling me about your inclusive fiction writing. You know, we laughed about how in some circles, you know, it's considered a radical concept to be inclusive.
Yeah,
you know?
it's a dirty word.
So can you tell us a little bit about your creative works?
Yeah, so, God, I've been writing for as long as I could hold a pencil, honestly. Both of my parents, as well as being librarians and nerds, they're also both authors. So, I grew up in a household of words. So, I mean, I've been writing. I started out when I was little writing short stories. When I was, I think I was 6 when I had my first work published. I entered a short story about magical trams, as in the trains, basically magical trains. I entered it in a competition, and I won. And my story was read on children's radio by a famous New Zealander. And that was sort of my first, you know, moment of realizing, I mean, this is something I actually want to do, not just something, like it's something I can do and do well. And from there, it's been just years and years of writing and perfecting. I've gone into I've done visual art and some music stuff as well. It's all just been about exploring, having fun with it, really. And that's always my thing when people are like, how do you start? And I'm like, just have fun. If you're having fun, then what you're creating is going to reflect that.
Have you gotten any pushback from being inclusive in your fiction?
So I have. Back about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when I was publishing some stuff for D&D 5e, I got some pretty nasty comments about some of the stuff I was producing, just from really ignorant, angry people. Because I was, you know, my writing is inclusive. I had characters of all different types, and they were like, it was the generic sort of stuff, you know, just a woke virtue signaling, pretentious, all that sort of rhetoric. But I never really let it get to me. If people don't like what I'm writing, then, I mean, they don't have to read it. And but just the same way, I don't have to read what they write. So if I see a comment that starts out with something offensive, I'm just going to delete it. I'm not going to read it. I just don't dignify them. I don't even read the rest of it. As soon as I know what it is, I just delete it because it's not worth my time.
We've always had, that's my thought, like with the whole consent in gaming, you know, like the whole consent in gaming argument is you don't have to use it if you don't like it. Like, I don't understand, like, why do you have to take the time to bash something that obviously you do not enjoy? If you do not enjoy it, then don't participate. It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
People just love being like, it's like what Ray said. They like to talk down to like virtue signaling. It's like, you don't actually care about it. You're just trying to show that you're woke. When, you know, people actually do care about it, is that these other people can't wrap their minds around actually, you know, being compassionate or sympathetic with other people. It's kind of crazy.
So
go ahead, Ray.
So my work, I don't publish much. Like just openly publish much, just because, you know, it's not what I want to get out of it. So a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the writing I'm doing is for the games that I'm actually playing. You know, it's for my weekly Numenera game, or at the moment, or whatever else it is. Sometimes it's for people in the Cypher Unlimited channel when someone's got a question about a place. I'm always happy to, you know, write something up. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm just having fun with the tools I have, with a keyboard in front of me. Actually, two, a writing keyboard and a musical keyboard in front of me. Just having fun and creating stuff that I like.
Nice.
Yeah, awesome.
Very
awesome.
nice.
I mean, I would also say this because we have a really good question in chat, but I would also say this. I think people grow and change. What like the 16-year-old me is a lot different than the 46-year-old me. You know what I mean? So
Well, you know what?
I think sometimes we have to have these discussions so people's eyes can open up to that everyone has different feelings and different wants in games, and these discussions are helpful. Even if you don't agree with necessarily everything we say or are saying in this video, at least listen to it because your opinion might change over time.
And here's a big reality for a lot of people, and I think sometimes it's missed. And Anthony, you understand this. You were there right along with me. We were the original LGBTQIA community when it came to RPGs. We were kind of the original people.
I mean, I would agree with that statement. I think everybody's in their own.
No, what I'm saying is, no. Listen to what I'm saying. Let me finish the statement, then you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not following that at all.
What I'm saying is, we were the original ones ostracized. We were the original ones who got looked at cross-eyed for being there.
I think that everybody's been ostracized at the same time.
No, they weren't, because there wasn't a community back then like this. There wasn't.
I disagree, Dean. I fundamentally disagree.
Okay,
Well,
disagree.
Well, guys, we can move it along here, and let me just say that that what you were saying about people opening their minds and whatnot, it's a really good segue into our next question here, and it's kind of how companies are starting to get behind this idea of inclusivity and diversity and whatnot. So let's kind of talk about diversity also in gaming, both in products and its hiring practices. Do you think that the industry has shown progress recently in that aspect, and what gaming companies do you kind of see spearheading this sort of movement?
I would say, for me personally, if I open up my copy of Discovery in front of me and I go to the first page where it's got the credits, and the bottom of the credits it says, as we agree with the growing consensus that they can and should be used as a gender-neutral, singular English language pronoun when one is needed, we have adopted that as the style in our products. If you see this grammatical construction, it is intentional. And that is sign that the industry's making progress. The fact that, a game like that, and it's Numenera is far from the only one doing it now, but the fact that I can take a mainstream RPG product, because comparatively speaking, Numenera is a pretty mainstream RPG product, not as much as D&D, but they're very different scales. But when you've got something like Monty Cook Games, who's not a small company, with the amount of books they're selling, look at the Kickstarter campaigns. When you see, products like that have that really specific language in there, going, we recognize this, the world is changing, and so are we. And even in the D&D 5e products, some of the more recent ones, there have been, specifically written queer characters and stuff like that. So I would say the industry is definitely changing for the better. It's getting we've moved so far from where we used to be. I've got a couple of older books on my shelves where through the entire book, if they're referring to the player or the GM, it's he. It's always he. That's it. There's no not even any reference to the possibility of a female GM or player. The language is all in there as he, him. When the player does this, his character. And the fact that now we've got books where it's like their character or her character or other stuff, it's a very sort of objective measure of improvement. It's something we can look at. We can take these two things side by side and we can go, this has improved. We're not perfect. The industry is not perfect by any means. There's still a long way to go. But the fact that, yeah, I can open up a product like that and I can go, right, this is, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's better. It gives me hope, and that's what keeps me in the hobby. And it's, I've just seen in chat, yeah, that's a really great call out, is the combat wheelchair rules for D&D 5e. Another fantastic example of content creators making the games we love more inclusive and just better.
I mean,
so yeah,
that's something that I could definitely relate to, and I think what Dean was hinting at earlier was we see the same thing, but when it comes to race, not seeing early D&D, there wasn't any Latino characters whatsoever, or African American characters whatsoever,
or Native American,
or Native American, or Asian American. So we could definitely relate to not being properly represented, and I think now, like when you see companies like Monica Games that show the wide spectrum of races, from the mundane job to the heroic heroes, it's a good time to be gaming, because I think that most people like to see themselves, see what they look like.
Yeah, it's I'd say, yeah, there's been a lot of strides, and I mean, even if we're just talking about on the covers, like the old D&D covers when they showed adventurers, they were all white. They were all white, and they were all men. And in a lot of the old RPG art, if there was a woman, then she was wearing a lot less than would be practical in a dungeon adventure. But now we can look at, say, the cover. We can go to some of the art in the 5e core book or Numenera books, and we see, all different. We can see, men, women, others, all dressed appropriately, which is nice. It's it's that recognition that what the industry was doing in the past wasn't right.
You mean bikini armor wasn't protective enough?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on that, because you know what it actually proves? It actually proves that the women who wore that were so much more badass, because if they can survive a fight with no armor, then the paladin in his heavy tank armor has no excuse. No excuse whatsoever.
I used to always crack up is there was always that winter scene where they'll have like the dwarf with a fur hood on. The barbarian is wearing animal skin, and the female ranger's in bikini armor, like standing on the mountain in the middle of the snow sea.
With a cloak on, yeah.
Yeah, with a cloak on.
Yeah, it's
it's a +2 cloak of warmth. What do you want?
I'd say with different, yeah, the to sort of wrap that all up with a nice bow, I would say that, as with all things, it's not perfect, and it's a journey. That's something that's the real sort of key to all of this, is that the improvements that are being made to role-playing games, it's a marathon, not a sprint, where we're making progress increment by increment, and every time we make more progress, we make the games better. No one's calling for all copies of D&D First Edition to be burned because of their issues. It's just, every edition, now with 5th edition and looking forward to potentially a 6th edition in the next decade, we just improve, step by step, edition by edition.
We had this conversation offline as well, and you're not a bad person if you enjoyed 1st edition D&D. That was what was out at the time.
See if I can get it. This is another great example. Harlem Unbound for Call of Cthulhu.
Yep.
This is a fantastic book, and is, I think, really indicative of how far we've come. The fact that we can have a book for Call of Cthulhu, a game based around the mythos created by a truly, truly nasty man. H.P. Lovecraft was not a nice man. He was racist. He was terrible human being. But the fact that right this year, I bought this a few months ago. It's the second edition of Harlem Unbound, written by Black RPG writers, teaching lessons on the horrible racist history of America in Call of Cthulhu. H.P. Lovecraft, if he knew that there was a big book all about how he was a racist for a game based around his mythos, you know, he'd turn in his grave, and that's a great thing.
Well, just like if you think about, what was it, Lovecraft Country, that's another example of, it being put right out there before you for you to see it. That one poem that he wrote, and they put it right in the show for everybody to hear.
I don't know if that can be seen, but that's the first line on one of the first pages. Lovecraft was a racist.
It focused. We saw it for a hot second. Focused.
Oh, yeah. It says Lovecraft was a racist, and it talks about how, as a GM running Call of Cthulhu, how you can handle that fact, and how, as a white GM, you can make the scene better and more comfortable for that. And it's just, it's nice that I love that I can have a book like that on my shelf. Like, because 20 years ago, I couldn't have, it just wouldn't have been there.
And you make such great points.
It makes it's going to sound really cheesy, but it makes my heart really happy that I can have a book like that, and others as well. I've got a book that'll be hitting my shelf in a couple of weeks called Thirsty Sword Lesbians. And do you know how happy it makes me that I can have that book? That's just it gives me so much hope for the future of the hobby that we're in. It's such a great thing.
But before we move on to the next, sorry, I want to say this before it leaves my mind because it's super funny. Because we were talking about Lovecraft, and you saw the line he was a racist. So I saw a video on YouTube posted online recently, and it was it was Lovecraft a racist, and it was like a 3-minute long video, and I saw in the comment sections of where it was posted, like, people were debating it, like they didn't actually look at the video. They're like, of course he was racist. Like, yeah, of course. And then you click the video, and again, it's a 3-minute long thing, so I was expecting a little bit of talk or whatever, and it has an opening, and then the title of the video was Lovecraft a racist? The guy just says yes, and the video ends, and it's like 2 minutes of end credits. That was it.
This is a question we should ask then, right? If we go back to all these literary heroes, because you could say the same thing about Walt Disney, do you not appreciate their work? And don't get me wrong, I know they're hideous people, right?
The thing.
But there has to be a line where
here's the thing.
You can appreciate someone's art without.
Here's the thing. There's no questioning talent. Okay, there's no questioning talent. People have talent. Robert E. Howard created Conan, big racist. Tarzan, all of those kind of things. There's no arguing the talent that they had to create these great stories and to evoke the imagination and so on and so forth. But they're buckets of shit when you really think about it as human beings. And I would never want to meet the person. At the end of the day, part of me as, Black man, Native American, minority, the whole nine, part of me, yes, is a little upset because I enjoyed it, as a kid, because I didn't know any better. But, moving forward, I actually thank them for being who and what they are, because they educated me as well. They opened my eyes. So that's how I think.
My question is, do you separate the art from the person?
Yes, absolutely.
100%.
I think that there's one of the really important things for me is that a lot of these artists are long dead, and are not gaining anything from what we're doing. They're not gaining any financial benefit from their work. For more modern figures, I feel like there's more of an onus on us to avoid their work that financially supports them. But when we're talking about H.P. Lovecraft, he's long past caring about who buys Lovecraftian stuff. So as long as and again, it's in Harlem Unbound, as long as we acknowledge, he was a racist. He was a racist piece of shit. As long as we acknowledge that, and if it's the same in a lot of the really homophobic stuff, you know, a lot of the queer-phobic stuff, you know, as long as we recognize and don't ignore the fact that these creators were who they were, as long as we acknowledge that and commit to learn from it, then we're better off for it. And another thing that, and this varies from person to person. I have a friend who completely disagrees with me on this, but me personally, I love taking stuff that was written by really homophobic, really transphobic people and making it really gay. I get a special sense of love in my heart when I gay up something from a homophobe, because it's just the best way you can just pull the finger at them, you know, is take their work and claim it for me, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm gonna grab it, I'm gonna grab onto it, and I'm gonna make it like with I wrote a short piece of Harry Potter fan fiction, and I made it so gay. And it was honestly, more than anything else, just an FU letter to J.K. Rowling.
That's hilarious.
You know, yeah, it's see, I think that as long as we're acknowledging who these people are and not just brushing it under the rug, we're having, you know, if we're playing Call of Cthulhu, we're acknowledging Lovecraft was a racist, or if we're running something else, then we're acknowledging that this person was, you know, not a nice person with not nice views. As long as we acknowledge that, commit to learn from it, then I think we're all better off, honestly. Yeah,
All right,
it's just...
So, you know, what you're saying makes perfect sense, and that's actually a good segue into this particular question. It says, the last few years, we've seen an explosion of diverse game designers starting to get their chance to showcase their talents. Do you have any idea what, you know, or any thoughts on what you think the reasoning behind this, and do you think it's going to continue?
Was it you sort of cut out there a bit with a wonky internet connection? Could you ask the question again?
I said, what do you think is the reason behind such the explosion of diverse talent? You know, we're seeing such a diversity in design, so on and so forth.
The internet. The internet. The fact, it's a bit of a simplistic answer. The internet and the ability that it's given people to self-publish, because back in, say, let's look at, you know, even pre-role-playing games, talking about just general fiction, back in the 1920s, 30s, back or forward, in that period, if you wanted your work published, you either needed the money to buy your own press and staff it, and then distribute your own books, or you needed to go to a publishing house run by, at that point, predominantly white, rich men, and they had to rubber stamp your work. And of course, they wanted to put through work that they liked, and they liked work that agreed with their views. But with the advent of the internet, and especially the explosion in like social media, and that includes stuff like YouTube, Reddit, all of them. We're now in a golden age where someone can produce something to an insanely high quality on their own computer. All it takes is hard work and time, and they can put it on the internet. No need to go to a publishing house, no need to go pay for a printing press, and their work's out there. They can go to Kickstarter and they can see if there's an audience for it. They can go to RPG forums on Reddit, Facebook, Discord, wherever, and they can put their work out there, and people can see it, people can enjoy it, and importantly, people can share it. And so the work grows, it expands, and it grows. And the reality is that the audience has always been there. You know, there's always been queer people who have wanted to see queer work, a lot of us. And so when we see it, we're right there.
You brought up a great point. I think, you know, not only for so many different races, nationalities that try to get in the industry and couldn't, self-publishing has brought the light on to so many different groups, you know, and it brought the spotlight on the bigger companies to hire these people. That's why you now see the MCGs, you know, the the Fates of the world, the you know, the Wizards of the Coast of the world, now recruiting these people to, you know, to work on their product. The, you know, the internet and self-publishing has been wonderful for the gaming industry.
The ability for someone to make their own thing and put it out there and showcase their talent, we've never had it better than our ability now to just really show off who we are. Because I mean, talented artists of every type have existed throughout all history. Back in the 20s, back in the 1800s, there were queer, there were people of color, there were Asian, there were all sorts of people incredibly talented who just weren't getting they just didn't have the ability to show. They didn't have the ability to do that. And now
it was just like people when they used to have to write under assumed names.
Yeah.
One of my favorite writers of all times is Andre Norton, and it's a woman. But because of the time, the era, and the books that she was writing, she wasn't included. She wasn't
exactly.
She wasn't. They wouldn't have published her books. And like I said, she's written some of the best pulp sci-fi that you ever want to read. If you've never read any of it, look her up. Andre Norton. It's amazing stuff. You know.
We have it's for all the bad things that the internet's given us, and the internet has allowed some terrible things to happen. It's also allowed this explosion of minority creators, because it's just so you don't need to go through. And there are still some hurdles, right? So like social media platforms like Facebook and stuff cracking down on queer content, on inclusive content. It's not perfect. The moderation on some of those platforms can be really terrible, but it's still the internet. It's still essentially, depending on what country you live in, essentially free. So you can put your stuff out there, and if people like it, then it's going to start traveling. And it just couldn't travel back. Even 20 years ago, it wouldn't have gained the traction it could now, because we're all on devices now. Humanity has never been more connected, especially during the pandemic, than any other point in history. We're in an age of unparalleled communication, and because of that, we can have all this. We can have you can just be one person sitting at your desk at home, not from a rich family, not from a titled family or anything, just sitting at home with your laptop, and you can produce something that people will read and use. All it takes is that computer, upload it, and done.
We're in the age where the cream absolutely rises to the top. And now with the internet and with self-publishing, it's a lot easier to find the best of the best. It's removed
one of the key barriers, and one of the key barriers to more inclusive publishing being possible was the fact that you had to submit manuscripts to these big white run publishing houses, white men run publishing houses. And that barrier has been removed. There are more barriers. It's not perfect. There is still a lot of power imbalance. But the important thing is that the work can now get out there. It can be out in the world, and it can be seen. And that's just so important.
Let's steer the conversation a little bit towards role-playing games, right? Do you have any tips for GMs to make sure that their games are exclusive, first of all, and creating a safe space for all its players?
Yeah, so it's so tricky, and honestly, it's just as controversial a topic as consent in gaming is. But some of the really important things when you're trying to create a gaming space that's inclusive, it all comes back to sort of this core rule of sensitivity, and a willingness to educate yourself. Say, as a GM, right, you want your game to be as inclusive as possible. The best way to do that is to actually talk to people. We all, unless you're some, rich prep kid from the States living in a gated community, you know, you probably know people of a whole bunch of different backgrounds. I mean, and just like talk to them. Go, hey, are you willing to ask them? Don't expect them, but go, hey, are you willing to share your experiences with me? I want to learn. And if they're not, then, well, as I said before, the internet's at our fingertips. There's a lot of resources out there. I know it can seem a bit. I know it can definitely seem very daunting at first, sort of very, very scary. But if you're willing to learn and willing to listen, most importantly, then it's only your work, your games are only going to get better.
But you know, as a GM, right? Are you actively pursuing ways to you know, create a safe space? Like, are there any techniques you're using? Are you having a session 0 and openly having this discussion?
So yeah, there's so many tools in the GM's toolkit to make your game a safe space. And safe space, I know that can definitely be like a dirty term, you know. Ooh, the snowflakes with their safe spaces, but it's so easy to do. Like, as you said, one of the most fundamental ways to do it is to have a session 0 and go, look, everyone, let's talk about it. We're gonna be. People don't appreciate how intimate role-playing is. You're essentially opening a part of your soul to these people. You're sharing a part of your life with these people. It's a seriously, you know, it's not just you're not just robots, and you're going to be having this really close connection to these people. You're going to feel these strong emotions with them. So you should have those conversations at the start. Go, what are we comfortable with? What are we not comfortable with? I mean, and it's like in my games, because I can talk a lot about being, you know, about being a queer person, about being, because I'm trans. I'm also asexual. I'm also pan-romantic. I'm queer as they come. But I'm also white. And so I have to have those conversations, especially when there are non-white players at my table going, hey, I would like you to take the lead on this. Tell me what you're comfortable with. And I really like to make sure that people are asserting, you know, like feel comfortable enough to assert, you know, their comfort level. Because you might have, say, like for us, you might have someone of Indigenous descent. For you, it might be Native American. For an Australian Aboriginal, we might have someone of that descent, and they're probably going to feel really uncomfortable if you have colonialism featuring prominently in your game. But equally, they might really enjoy having it in the game because they get to destroy it. And it's about having that conversation, you know, go, this affects you, and recognizing that it's not about you as the GM. It's about, you know, how it impacts them. That's the important thing. Like, it's not like a personal slight or anything against you and your game. It's just recognizing that some stuff hurts people and going, is this going to hurt you? How can I make it better? How can I help you feel safe in this game? Tell me what you need, and being open to. And it's really important to be open to, if you ask, listen. Don't ask and then ignore it. Like, it's super important that even if it's really uncomfortable what they tell you, if they start telling you about some really uncomfortable homophobic experience or racist experience or whatever, if they start telling you about that experience, it's really important to listen. You know, like, listen and learn from it. Because, like, if you're a straight GM, and one of your players is like, hey, I had a really bad time in my life with people being homophobic, and they tell you a story and they go, I really don't want to have that in my game. I want to avoid it. Then you need to take that on board and go, I'm not going to do that. See, I'd say, honestly, the best tool in a GM's toolkit for making their game more inclusive are their ears, you know, or their eyes for reading, is listening. Listen to the people who it actually impacts. If you're talking about homophobia, listen to gay people. If you're talking about transphobia, listen to trans people. If it's racism, listen to people who that actually impacts on a day-to-day basis, you know? as a white person, I don't live with systemic racism. I have that privilege. No one has ever, I've never been denied an opportunity because of the color of my skin. I can't know what that's like. But I can listen to what other people tell me. I can take it on board and try and make them feel comfortable. In the same way that I would expect someone who is not queer to do the same for me. Listen to my story, listen to what makes me uncomfortable, and then take that on board. And it's so easy to do. Just have a session 0. Just talk. Just talk about it. It's
the whole concept of safe spaces is comfortability, and comfortability.
Yeah, it's just
fun.
And I know I'm going to piss some people off right now because I'm going to talk briefly about consent in gaming, super briefly. But that's the foundation of it, is consent, It's just that everyone consents to the content. Everyone is comfortable with it. If in your game you have a player who's like, you know what? I'd really like our main villain to be really homophobic because it would be great for me to punch that homophobe. And they tell you that, then you take that on board and you give them that platform to have that great moment where they whack the homophobe. But also, if they're like, I feel really uncomfortable with that, then you don't include it.
It works both ways, as well as the player. From the player perspective, you also have to be responsible to make it comfortable for the other players and the GM alike. And I think that's very important. People don't realize that the GM though the GM controls the narrative, they also don't have all the power. It's a two-way street, and it should be viewed that way.
That's super important as well. It's not just on the GM to create a safe space at the table. It's on everybody, If you're a table of straight people and you've got one gay or trans or otherwise queer person at the table, it's on every single straight person at that table, not just the GM, on all of them to make it a safe space. And it's just, it's so... The thing that annoys me is that it requires so little energy to not be a dick. Like, you can just not. And that's what really bugs me, because, you can just not make that joke. You're not going to die because you weren't able to make that homophobic joke. You can make another joke. You can make people laugh.
You make some strong points there, and I think that goes overall, not just the queer or the homophobic, or, it should be just in general. Know your table, know who you're playing with, and everybody can get along that way. And I think that's where we as a people don't do our part. A lot of times people think like Anthony and I are fighting. That's just Anthony and I's way. We have we're a couple of New Yorkers. We're confrontational like that, but it's no malice. But we know each other and we know what we can do. And that has to be, universal at the table. But before we go any further, Al, you said there was a question from the audience that we wanted to ask.
Yeah, before we move on to the last part of our little interview talk here, I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right, but Atalisk asked earlier in the chat, do you have any specific thoughts related to inclusion of neurodivergent people at the table? Or maybe how to include people who have experienced trauma or have mental illness?
I have many thoughts. So just to speak openly and just so I'm, out there, I am neurodivergent and have these things. So I'm on the spectrum. I have a learning disability called dysgraphia. I have some processing issues. There's a bunch of, aspects to me that aren't what we like to define as normal. I also suffer from depression, from anxiety, and from PTSD. I suffer from these things, and they affect my life. So, I have a lot of thoughts about it. So, as someone who is disabled, neurodivergent, and has trauma, ticking all the boxes. Not good boxes to tick, mind you. The trauma one. Don't recommend it. But especially around issues of trauma. So one of the really important things when it comes to talking about trauma is this concept of triggers. And trigger has become a buzzword on the internet for someone being offended, but it actually has a meaning in psychiatry, in psychology, in the therapeutic sense. In that sense, a trigger is an event, often a key phrase, a sound, a sense, something, a distinct thing that causes the recollection of trauma, or causes the trauma to be relived, or causes anxiety relating to the trauma to be felt. So, say someone who has PTSD relating to an earthquake, if the building shakes from the wind, that may be a trigger for them, and that may trigger a reaction just to minor anxiety, or all the way to a full-blown panic attack, or a flashback. And that's sort of the really key thing, is that these triggers exist. And when we're working with mental health in games, and stuff like this was discussed in, where is it? This wonderful book. And I don't agree with everything in We're All Mad Here. I don't agree with everything. I don't like the sort of the connection between mental illness and fairy tales. I personally find that an uncomfortable connection for personal reasons. But at its base level, the stuff that's talked about is important. It's, when we are, as with all things in role-playing games, when we're working with mental illness, and it same goes for neurodivergence or disability, is we have to remember that these are things that impact people's lives. These are often painful experiences that people have gone through, especially relating to PTSD, whether it be from a soldier who was traumatized in war, or a child who was traumatized in a natural disaster, or whatever else it is. We're dealing with issues that are really close to home for people and really emotional. So when we're including content for neurodivergent people, for trauma, for mental illness, for all these things, when we're including those in our games, we just have to be aware that, as with if we're going to include difficult topics like racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, it's just about knowing that it's hard for some people to have those, to confront that, and talking with the people that you're playing with, going, hey, everyone, is there anything that I need to avoid? And I do this with the consent in gaming checklist. I know other people don't like it, but that's what I use in my games. I go, please tell me the things that trigger you, and don't hold back. Even if it's just what you would call a minor trigger, I want to know about it so I can create a safe space. So if, say you've got a player who suffers from PTSD relating to earthquakes, as a GM, the way you can make your game inclusive for that person is most likely to just not have them in your game, not have the ground shaking. And then if you want to have them be seen, like have them have that moment of feeling included, you could have an NPC who has a reaction to something that the players do. Something the players do triggers them. And just sort of, and then allowing that to sort of spill into a conversation of, well, I didn't mean to do that, but it had an impact.
Anthony, you're muted.
Let me.
Anthony, you're muted.
I was gonna say, at the end of the day, it kind of boils down to having these honest, straightforward discussions.
You can't, as a GM, you can't create a safe space unless people are honest with you about what they need. And for some people, it's really hard to know what they need.
It's an awareness thing. It's twofold, because see, like I said, I've been doing, for the last few years, I've been working with veterans coming home from the military. So I deal with the PTSD all the time. I'm a veteran myself, so I understand it. There are things that I look at on television, movies I watch, things like that, that take me back to places. thank God I don't, have the issues myself, but I understand them. And that's what needs to happen. GMs have to understand what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And as a GM, it's your responsibility to learn what you're dealing with. And if you don't know, be honest there too. It's two ways. And it's just a two-way street. I think that's what it really boils down to.
Yeah, if you don't understand, be honest and say it. Don't if you've got a player who has, say, a disability or something that you don't understand, admit it. Be honest. I don't understand. And if they're willing to explain, that's great. If they're not willing to explain because they don't want to put in that emotional labor, then they don't have to. It's not on them.
And I think that'll make a better place for everybody.
Yeah.
And with that being said, what can we look forward to from the Radiant Draconis Design? Do you have any projects in the works? Anything you want to let our listeners know about to look forward to? Anything like that?
So I've always got stuff in the works. I've always got content that I'm working on. I do have a YouTube video that will hopefully be coming. The channel doesn't have many videos currently. It's just got some music stuff that I've shared, but I do have a video that's going to go up soon and some other stuff planned. I'm gonna be sort of doing a deep dive on some topics that interest me. Talking about these issues of inclusivity in gaming and especially relating to my current favorite game, which is Numenera. Of course, there's always going to be new, or when I remember, there's going to be new stuff going up on the website as well. I try to sort of post content for Numenera GMs on my website. It's the first thing when you go on there. I haven't updated it for a while because I've been a bit slack, but I try. Just sort of trying to get some more content out there, feel a little bit more confident in my own content to get it out there. Look forward in the next couple of weeks to a video going up on the YouTube channel. That'll be my first proper, face talky video. And I'm pretty psyched about that. It's just going to be sort of an introduction to who I am, which I guess we've already done here. But then sort of talking about, it's sort of just talking about, what I appreciate in Numenera, my current game, and the tools I think it has that can really sort of enable better games. So look forward to that.
Yeah, but first off, this has been an awesome discussion. But we definitely gonna have to touch this topic again because I think there was a lot of areas that we missed because this is such a broad topic.
It's a big topic.
So we would definitely have to have another discussion about this. But this is the part where we dig deep into your soul, right? And we pull out your essence and we stretch it on the table for the world to see. This is our rapid fire questions. Are you ready to enter the hot furnace of raw questions?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's go for some. All right, let's do it. I'm ready.
Player
I take a swig from a bottle.
Okay, let's let them get ready.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Player or GM?
GM.
Pull punches or TPK?
Pull punches.
Online or in-person gaming?
In person, all the time. All the time.
I miss
Every
it.
time.
Announce the difficulty number or keep it a secret?
Announce the difficulty number.
Salty or sweet snacks at the gaming table?
Both. Always got to have both.
RP or combat?
RP. Yeah.
PDFs or physical books?
I'm going to let my bookshelf speak for itself there.
Oh, pen and paper or digital notes?
Digital notes. Digital notes, sure.
Pre-written adventures or original content?
Original content all the way. All the way.
Nice.
All right. So
You survived our rapid fire. Congratulations.
All right.
Awesome.
Congrats. Once again, just want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for all the great work you do on the server. You know, we really appreciate that. We're glad to have you as one of our mods. You know, good.
I love being a mod. I love being a mod on the in the CU Discord. It's such a great community. It's so great to be able to give back to it. Such a
Well, you give a lot back, and you know we really appreciate all that, and the fact that you know we already know you're a great conversationalist. You know, just from tonight, so pretty awesome there. So can't wait for more discussions to continue on. But with that being said, guys, you got any final statements before we do our thing for the night?
I mean,
I just
Anthony,
want to say that, Ray, I'm so happy you reached out because I think this is a great conversation. Even though we didn't touch 1/10 of what we possibly can in the direction of this conversation, I'm so happy that we got the conversation started. It's very important. You know, like we always say, it's no one's, you know, everyone should hear each other out because that's the only way we're going to get along. And the only way that happens is by having these open dialogue discussions. So thank you so much for coming on the show and, you know, bringing this important topic to the light, you know, forefront. We really appreciate it.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, and just for me, thank you guys all for stopping by. Thank you, Ray, for coming on talking about this. It's definitely something that, like Anthony said, you know, it begins with an open discussion. You know, without that, you know, you can't really learn or, you know, see the other side of things. Yeah, and I think Anthony has a few words.
Yeah. You like Cypher Unlimited? You like what we do? You know, give us a follow here on Twitch or go to our YouTube channel and like, share, subscribe our videos there. We're trying to bring our viewership up on YouTube, so we really appreciate if you subscribe there. We're trying to get 1,000 views. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell us we're assholes. We don't care. Just post a comment there. Or go to our Ko-fi and give us a little donation there. Like I said, our videos will always be free, but it helps out with little things like Zoom course. Or go to our online store and pick up this cool Cypher Unlimited merch like I got on today. You'll be the coolest kid on the block. You know, I'm running out of breath. I think that's everything. Or visit our Facebook page. Or last but not least, join our Discord. Cypher Unlimited, we have the largest fan-run Discord server. We're discussing all things Monica games, Cypher System, Invisible Sun. We have games being played every day. Yes, I said every day. We have close to 4,000 members there discussing all things MCG. Come join us. You could chat with any of the four of us here. Ray's there, Dean's there, Al's there. We all there. We love you guys.
Guys, real quick, one last thing for me. Tolus has arisen. And yes, we will be talking about it in a couple of weeks, but games will be starting soon as well, just so everybody knows.
Oh, we also forgot to mention that tomorrow at 10 p.m. we'll be on Eric Frankhouse Presents, playing our second game of Echoes of the, what was it?
Night Below.
Night Below.
Echoes of the Night Below, a 5e adventure with the great Eric Frankhouse, the INGM. So go to his Twitch channel tomorrow at 10 p.m. and see us die.
If I could just have just have the internet's, you know, airwaves for just one more minute, I just want to finish up one thing. Well, two things actually. The first is that if you're going to take anything away, if you're going to take any soundbite away from everything we've talked about on this stream, it's listen. That is just the most important lesson you can leave this stream with: is listen and learn. And just a quick plug that I forgot to do: if you want to help support my work in relation to my work with queer youth communities, hit me up on Discord and I can talk about how you can donate or contribute to that. There are ways you can contribute monetarily or through the creation of content. So if you are interested in supporting queer youth in New Zealand through the work that I do, then yeah, please hit me up in the Discord, PM me, at me, whatever, and we can talk about how you can help out.
And if you give me the links, I'll make sure to put it on our YouTube channel. You know, I'll put it on the description on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, thanks for all of you for having me on. It's been amazing. I'm very grateful for you giving me this platform to talk about stuff that I really care about.
The pleasure is all
thank
ours.
you.
Hey man, thank you again for coming and discussing it with us. Because again, part of this learning process is having, you know, these discussions. But yeah, this has been an awesome night. Thank you so much for coming by, everyone who stopped by to chat it up, watch. Video will be up on YouTube tomorrow for anyone if you want to share it out to other people maybe didn't have a chance to stop by live. Any relevant links will be in the description down below or in the chat on the side here. Yeah, from us at the CU, we will see you later.